everybody, it's Allie, and welcome to part 2 of the Mini Cooper shoot. And today I'm going to go over the editing and some of the lighting tips. I'm hoping you can't hear my neighbor who's weed whacking and gardening, but I really wanted to show you this with a car, so sorry. Anyway, this is the kind of lighting I use, and it's just a bare bulb Elinchrom, but you can use any kind of strobe you want. You can see I have it on a large. This is basically just a boom arm. And here's one of the keys to this. You do not take the light and just fire it at the car. You will get hot spots, and the hot spots are going to be horrible. You're going to get massive reflections, and it's going to look like crap. By the way, this is Angus. This is my husband's Mini, really nice Mini. So I'm just going to show you some of how I would shoot this with the lighting. So I'm not shooting it right now, but I would take this light and I would pass it so that I would shoot one that was like here, and it would capture the light and you could see the angle. Another would be here, and then I would probably shoot one here. I'm not on top of the car. Another angle would be right about here. The idea is that I want the light to be fairly natural, but I want to bring up the details of the car. Normal lighting on a car is going to be from above. So really you're just going to be enhancing the natural light that you would have had. And I want to capture those details like the side skirt, and I want to get the scuttles, and I want to get the rims to look good. So I'm going to make sure that I get my shadows in the right area, bring in some highlights so that I can have a better shoot. Once I've done that, I'm going to have, like, depending on the size of the car, 3 to 8, or I've even had some, like I shot a Lambo once, I had 15 images for each view. It just, curvy cars, maybe you need more images to see what's going to work. So now what I'm going to show you is how I edit this in Photoshop. First I have to pick the images, then I go into Photoshop and I edit it. Okay, so here's the images from my shoot. And one thing that I like to do when I'm shooting with the lighting, the multiple lights, is I will use color groupings to determine the images that I think are going to go best. And we're going to use a very, very simple example here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab these 2 images and put them into survey mode. Oh, I grabbed 3, but so you can see that this one has more lighting on the side and on the tops of the light of the rims. This one is lit more on the back, and you kind of can see when I'm hitting it with the light, I am not aiming it directly at the car. I'm not trying to pass by the car. So what we're going to do now is I've got these 2 images selected. I'm going to go right click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. And this will put it into Photoshop one layer on top of the other. Okay, so I've got my 2 layers loaded, and one thing, you can decide which one you want to have on top and which one you want to have on the bottom. I'm going to try this with this layer on top, and I'm going to just change it to lighten mode. That looks pretty good. So by changing this to light mode, you can see that basically we've just combined the exposures of the 2 to get the car to be lit nicely. But we've got, like, I know I love my tattoos, but I don't really need to see them here. So where are they? They're actually in this image. So I'm going to go to my bottom image and just hit the brush tool and mask myself out. There I go. I'm gone. Okay. And I'm actually gonna, because that bottom image has a little bit, the top image is a little bit darker, I'm gonna just give it a little vignette now, why not? X, but I don't want that shadow happening, so I can always fix that another way. Okay, so the next thing we wanna do is look at the car. So I know I used a flash and I nailed it with the flash right there, and I hate that. So I'm gonna add a blank layer and Command plus. I'm going to zoom in, I'm going to hit L, and I'm going to select this reflection. Now you can go ahead and remove all this stuff, and you should remove all that if you don't like the look. And I like to use a stamp tool because it keeps my texture. I find that when I use the healing tool on this kind of things, it does too much smudging, and I don't want smudging. So I'm just going to kind of stamp this baby out and then Command D to release this. And you can see I've got some edging. So I'm going to hit 50%. Now here's the thing with cars. You're going to get reflections. You're going to get reflections you want. You're going to get reflections you don't want. You're going to get, you're just going to get reflections. It's what they do. So you need to be ready for your entire arsenal of how am I going to remove these reflections. I don't know why this little piece here is being, so I had it on darken mode and I need it on normal mode to get rid of this one little smudgy. Okay, so I'm gonna put it at 50%. And just kind of get the sky back in, but like I don't like how so nobody knows what the sky really looked like that day, but there we go. So now I've got something that looks a little bit more natural. I'm gonna just remove this one because it's making me crazy. So I put my stamp at 0 and I'm gonna just kind of and I do this in pieces so that I don't have to redo the whole thing if I screw it up. And you can just kind of remove these guys. I am not going to remove everything because then you're just going to be getting bored at this video. So we're going to leave the other ones. They should be removed. So I've removed the main, most offensive ones. And now what I want to do is add a little bit of contrast. My favorite way to add contrast is with some curves. I'm just going to pull this one down, and this is going to give me an overall contrast on the image. So you bring up the highlights, you make your little S. And the next thing I notice is that the car was shot in the shade. And up here, this is all natural late day sun. And what happens is you've got 2 color tones. And even though this is not really a composite, I have 2 color tones and I want to even that out. So I'm going to add a second curves layer. And the reason I'm doing it as a second is this one's going to be masked. And I'm going to change to blue. The reason I'm changing to blue is opposite yellow. I want to add more yellow into the bottom so that it'll match it up. And I'm going to go to the top and I'm going to pull the yellow into the highlight area. It also really brings out the blue a little bit more. It also adds a little bit more green back into the car because it was too blue. And so you can see the car looks great. The background, not great. It's too yellow. So I'm going to go back to my brush mode and hit X to be on erase, basically on my mask. And I'm just going to erase it from this background area, which is already warm enough. And then turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. That looks pretty good. I'd also like to just do a little bit of dodging and burning. I'm going to run my action. I'm going to keep my brush. I'm going to put it on default colors, hit D. I have black. I'm going to do about 20% and just kind of vignette it a little bit. That's all. Just a little quick vignetting. There we go. And I'm also going to kind of darken up my sky a little bit to bring out some of that detail. And one thing I kind of like to do too is I'm going to grab like a blue and blue it up a little bit with a dark blue. Okay, so that looks pretty good. The last thing I found out, my friend Pavel, I went and I did this and it looked a lot like this and I sent it to him and he says, Ellie, your perspective is off, that wall is bad. And he showed me this trick. So basically I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to first do a Command Option Shift E. That I knew. That made a stamped layer. Now I'm going to go to Filter, Adaptive Wide Angle. I never used this thing before. It's pretty awesome. So you leave it on auto, you go to this little first section, your constraint tool, and I'm just going to tell it that this line should be straight. I'm going to use the shift because I want to tell it that this should be vertical. It made it vertical. There we go. Now my building is vertical. I've got some weird little stuff going on, but I'm not worried about that. And my car is all messed up. I'm not worried about that either. I'm going to say okay. So the key is that when you make the line, you have to hold the shift down, and that tells it that that line is supposed to be straight up and down. I'm going to add a mask onto this. Go to my brush tool. First of all, I'm going to make sure I need to be at a 0% opacity. I want my mini back to being like not warped. So I'm going to take that off of this bottom part of the screen, and then I kind of got to blend it in. Oops. Okay, let's go with 5. So I'm kind of blending it in at the sky area. Actually, let me just go X. Whoop. X. So it's like blending in vertical lines can be a bit of a pain in the ass, but I think it's worth it. Okay, so this is going to be my blend point. So I'm keeping all this, and I've got this little guy right here. So I'm going to try going X, changing this to a mask out at 50%, and with just a little bit of sky, I should be able to just kind of blend this guy and get them to be happy friends. And if not, I'll just clone stamp it. And yeah, they don't want to be happy friends. So we're just going to add another layer. Just go stamp. At 100% option. And so when I'm doing these stamps, by the way, if you haven't noticed, it's always set to current and below. And people that get into frequency separation, you know, you have to always be watching, because if you do frequency separation, then you don't have current and below. You're always working on current layer, and then, you know, then you come here and it doesn't do anything. So you have to always watch your settings. So I'm doing it at 50%. The line is gone. So I want to thank you, Pavel, for showing me this trick for making this nice and straight. And that's it. That's the mini. That's how you merge the layers using the screen blend modes and straighten out the scene. Okay, so that was the editing. And the sun came out really bright, so I just moved myself into the shade. And besides, here's Tigger, he's back from the shop. So he had some cooling issues and he's all fixed. But when you have a mini, they break and you fix them. So the key thing is this: you need to pick the right images. You need to be sure your tripod is nice and tight, because there's a lot of detail work on cars. And if your tripod moves, your images may look okay when you're going in camera, but when you go to line them up, you're gonna have issues, and it's really hard to get things lined back up if they didn't line up properly when you did the shoot. The other thing is, think about your reflections. Are they natural? So if you're on a cloudiest day, you don't want any harsh reflections, but maybe if you were shooting on a sunny day, some crisp highlights, they could work. That's the main thing, is line it up, fix it in Photoshop. And I will say this, that I prefer shooting a car this way if I don't have good natural light than trying to set up a lighting setup. I don't have tens of thousands of dollars for a studio with all top lighting that's continuous. I can't do that. I do have enough strobes, but I don't think that's going to give me as good of a look. I would prefer to do this method. It's easy, it's portable, you could take it on site. So I want to thank you for watching this episode. And if you enjoyed it, give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you again in 2 weeks. Looking for some topics, so if you got any ideas, just let me know. And have a great day. Bye-bye.